Ian, we got a Patreon.
Patreon.com/CE podcast. You go, you spend a little money, you get in return weekly writings. I'll have one up tomorrow or the day after. You get the full video podcast. Full video. Yep, I said that right. You get a weekly hangout. Pretty soon you're going to be getting bonus episodes. Bonus.
Oh, yeah. You get a bonus one a month.
Bonus. And then you get to partake in these polls.
All right. And 39%. Should Pat and Ian avoid controversial topics? People don't like us talking about controversy on Twitter. 39%. And in first place, this is going to be an interesting one, I think. What if all video games were physically exhausting to play?
So my take on this is that they wouldn't be nearly as popular. I mean, one of the main things that makes them popular is the fact that they are passive entertainment. There are definitely video games that are tiring to play. The majority of the rhythm games can be tiring to play. Even if you're not playing DDR, something like Guitar Hero or even Poppin' Music or
Sure.
Beatmania 2DX, you're moving yourself around a lot more than you did if you're just sitting there with a controller.
Or even a light gun shooter like Time Crisis. You're moving a little bit.
You're moving around a little bit.
House of the Dead.
I think the biggest example of them, there's two big examples, though, that I point to when they wouldn't be popular if they were physically exhausting. One, Motion Controls and Kinect had a spot in the sun and had their day in the sun, and it's now gone. One reason is, it was gimmicky, but two, the other reason was most people, when they decide they want to play a video game, don't want to stand there and start swinging their arms around.
A lot, because it's supposed to be recreational, and maybe you're tired or at home from work, or you already did something outside, exercising or working on the yard.
Motion Controls went immediately from something that everyone thought was cool and this interesting bridge between like normal video games and virtual reality, where your actual movements start to, matter in the actual video game that you're playing. But very soon people were like, I don't want to deal with the motion controls, because maybe they just wanted to play a game of golf instead of having to stand there and swing it.
Or baseball where you swing it, or boxing.
It's one of those things where the option is nice, but once you start to try to make that its main input method, people don't want to do it.
You don't want to sweat. You don't want to sweat.
Because it's physical. Another, I think, example is, and this is going to end up with people getting mad at me, just like the computer game thing.
Oh, no, Ian, don't upset people.
Virtual reality.
Virtual
reality is neat. I did finally dip my toes into it with that Quest 2. I talked about it a few months ago. I like it. I use it a couple times a week. It's neat to escape. It's neat to escape. I like some of the games. I like the fishing simulators. I like the wall climbing simulator that I play. I think it's just called The Climb Part 2. But I don't use it every day. And why do I not use it every day? Because when I want to play a video game, I don't necessarily want everything translated to one-to-one movement.
Sure.
One of the things I do like about my Quest 2 is the, number of apps that are like, hey, this gives you a little bit of exercise because you got to move around. You need some space in your room. You're swinging your arms around like you're swinging a racket. Or if you're playing Beat Saber, something like Beat Saber is very much, a cardiovascular workout. It's fun. It's nice. I can be like, hey, I want to play this game and I'm going to get a workout, but I'm never going to want to play that game when I don't want to work out. I don't want to stand there and get stupidly sweaty.
Yeah, like would you want to play the Ring Fit Adventure just as a recreation?
It's neat, but no, exactly. It's not recreation. It's a separate thing. I look at the video games that I play on virtual reality. I look at any video games that use motion or a dance pad. I look at them separately than I do normal video games, and they don't cross.
So this is how I'm going to phrase this Twilight Zone thing. Imagine if mental exertion worked the same as physical, where at some point it was just easier. Obviously, you can be mentally fatigued from some games, probably. I used to play chess in high school. You would get mentally fatigued for thinking so much. But imagine if it was on the same scale, where maybe you can mentally play a video game for only 30, 40 minutes, where you're just like, oh, I'm exhausted. Mentally, I got it. You would have reshaped the entire video game market forever, because there would be no games anymore that would take a lot of time to play. It would never have developed. We would still be playing arcade games.
Yes, exactly.
Every game would be a 5-10 minute game. Mm-hmm. Still, if we were in some sort of weird zone where, say we never evolved enough to be intelligent enough to have thought-provoking conversations. We were much simpler people, where it's like, man, we really can't be focused on something and all this interactivity for more than 5-10 minutes, or else we would get worse and worse and worse, and then we just decline. This is how you do with physical activity. You're good, you're good, you're good, and then you get worse and worse and worse. If you had that for video games to that same extent, say goodbye to like, RPGs, adventure games, stuff that you really have to get into and play a long amount of time. And you can always say, well, Pat, what if in this hypothetical you play 5 or 10 minute stretches? No one would want to do that. No one want to play a game for 5-10 minutes and then continue on for 1,000 times, because then you got to recover. Say you can only. This is another way to say it. Say you can only play video games like we're in China. Say you only play video games for 15 minutes a day. That's all your body could take. That's it. That's a probably better way to look at it. That's all your mind could take before you need. It's a full day of rest. 15 minutes of gaming. That's it. My mind's got to rest. I can't do it anymore. You wouldn't have all these genres of games.
No, it'd be totally different, because you would have taken something that is inherently a relaxing pastime for most people and turned it into a physical exertion.
You might still have puzzle games, sports games, arcade games, simple platformers, and then you're running out.
Yeah,
because those are like most of the simple game types, right? Racing, maybe.
Yeah, maybe racing,
and after that. That's all our feeble minds can handle. That's all.
I mean, honestly, really just going to go back to it, not to lean on it, but just go back to VR and look at what games are most popular in VR and what games. Ones? Yeah, they're quick experiences. They're carved snowboarding from our friends at Chuhai, which is you do a couple downhill runs and you're like, wow, this is impressive. It feels great. I enjoy this. I'm done. You Puzzle Bobble VR.
Puzzle Bobble VR.
That's what that was my main impetus for finally getting that Quest 2.
You look up and see the bubbles.
Yeah, they're bubbles on a core, and you actually get a gun and you fire the bubbles and you get dinosaur hands. It's great.
But it's cool. But you can't be doing that for an hour.
That's close, but I mean, still, that's like a half an hour thing, and it's bite size. It's pick up and play. It's chunked into pieces that make sense for quick play. There are games in VR that are longer, but they're the small. That's a small genre. You don't have, like I said, like you brought up, you don't have a lot of RPGs. You don't have a lot of action games that take more than a couple hours.
Because physically your body can't take it. You're in your eyes. I can't imagine readjusting after playing an RPG for 6 hours.
Oh yeah, no.
You'd probably be nauseous, right?
Probably.
Again, that's one of the reasons why VR never took off like people thought it was. VR is going to be the next big thing. Well, wait a second.
VR is cool, but it's going to take off and become something that is viewed far differently than video games. Too many people are trying to jam VR into this video game category, and it's going to be its own separate thing that requires its own type of person that enjoys it. It requires its own ways of enjoying it. It's going to just get further and further separated, I think.
Yeah, maybe the pandemic would have been, it's like, oh, vacation somewhere, walk around through VR, you know what I mean? Like, do something like that.
Right.
But even that, I think people still see it like, well, it's not the same thing. So I think there's just still this weird in between where a lot of people would be like, well, it's nice, but it's almost like, I don't know, it's a giant tease to some people. Now it's a whole VR conversation about it. But no, it never blew up. Obviously, people predicting it would blow up, and it never got even to 10% of what people thought it would.
Right.
That people thought it would have changed the industry over the past several years, and it just didn't. It fizzled out. All right, any other thoughts? It's an interesting thought conversation. Would video games be as popular if they were, we'll just say mentally exhausting, where you can play 50, 20 minutes a game? Would it has become the biggest? I don't think it would have.
No,
I think it would have been like, okay, it's like playing a quick board game sort of thing. Maybe like every once in a while you do it. Because you can't sustain having all these games come out if you can't play them for a long amount of time. If that makes sense. Like you can't sustain the industry as much. They'd be like toys still. They'd be like handheld tabletops. That's basically how we would treat them. You get it out every once in a while.
Yeah.
And you play it. You would never get into a groove of regularity, because the one thing about games, which I think is super unique, that you can't do with board games or even easily physical activities or sports, you can't transfer from one to the other like you can with video games.
Right.
You can't pop out a cartridge easily. You can't. A board game, you got to set it up. You got to read the instructions. Hey, do you know how to play this game? No, I never did. We got to do a mock run through of a board games. You can't do that, especially with your $300 ones. You can't do that. With sports, you got to find another field. You got to find a basketball court, tennis court. You need more equipment. You got to rest, recharge. You can't just do that easily. You can't do that for most of those sports. With games, you can have an entirely different experience, lickety split, on your cell phone, on your whatever, your Game Boy, on your computer. That's the only entertainment genre you can easily do that. I guess with TV shows you can, and with movies, but that's a different time investment even to get into that. You can't just say, "Oh, we're gonna just watch a whole another TV show block and go through it." It's a little bit different thing for binging. People
Yes.
usually binge back and forth. They usually just stick with the one thing.
Yeah, exactly. They
part.
do one thing and get it over with.
Sure. So, all right, interesting thought experiment.
The what's?